I stand at the peak of the dead mountain, unmasked, so the stench can cloy around my steady breathing, looking down at the mangled remains of the last rebel fleet, melted into a pool of damned faces, some still wriggling to gasp a small piece of air while they lived. I stamp down my boot onto a face, muffling it as I sign the corpse act to leave whole worlds made from the remains of our desolations. I am ready for more of these mountains as places of horror for our next task. To wrench the immortal soldier from the weeping visage of a traitor, forced to die and die and die on this stench, devoured by the things that still writhe here, only to be pulled from our experimental rebirth as so many slack remains, until they stand up again. Another half-century of massacres collapsed to front before the vengeance of Mars was finally revealed, across decades of a glorious wrath of flaming weaponry, living beasts, at the scale of battleships burning away atmospheres. They bled right out of myth, and my victories became so vast. A lashing of holy words touched me at the silence between calamitous slaughter. In a pit created by explosions of flaring bright blues and greens, leaving behind slag and black soil, moulded together with the remains, churned beneath Mars's merciless machinations. They saw victory as the only target, no matter the cost of our men. We had become immortal then, had torn apart reality with great axe swings and tamed the monstrosities which had poured from those wounds. Yet still, as with millennia before, I stood with blade in hand, with armour shed or dented, and one arm buckled and folded like stamped paper, forcing my shaking, remaining grip to stay away from the deep wound where the wreck before me had chewed a huge bite through my side, and slipped stupidly in the blood. No matter the time that had passed, looking up at an enemy always made me feel foolish, and the heads that turned slightly grinned a crooked expression amidst its ruined pit across its cliff-like face from the last shots of my pistol before I overcharged it and melted the beast which had fed at me. The straightening order of defiance shivered across me, and with what little I had left I growled, looking down at the solemn face of a coward who had dug himself into a black tunnel, shuffling the soaking mud around his pale, bruised oval face, away into the darkness for what little comfort that would grant him. Within those few seconds passed the last time I was in sight of a human, as the herald glistened towards my ship's buckling knee, and whipped its dominant circuit down at me. I'm told the weight of the radio signal was so heavy it threw off the targeting systems of tens of miles around me. All other conversation lost as the air was pulled into enhancing the word. The first time Mars himself had placed his fist upon any world beyond his own. As we rose, the enemy's arms kicked towards me, the soiled long fingers coiled around a collection of archaic blades, all of its limbs arms, like eels below its bulbous heads, but while pulled by a physical chorus, I made sure to keep the enemy inside the pulling crimson beam. Its body darkened beneath the immense light, like an apparition of ash. My own buckling body was overwhelmed by the aggressive wind of its pull, but still the swords clashed, both of us flailing until I remembered so many times without gravity, and crashed the twisted remains of this long axe like so many cracked teeth through its head, chewing on the bones and squishing through the gelatin of its mind. Useless, I kicked the corpse away, watching it spinning quickly downward through the decimations of clashing lightning from the enemy crafts, our own explosives, and so much chaos. And the swirling, clarifying neon green closed around me in sudden cold, as a personal reality tear pulled me away to the divine, with the memory of stilled, statuesque angels stared from the echoes of the scar as forges light years away before I was staring at the heart of our infinite humanity, which as soft a touch as a limp diplomat's hand to shake. I was beyond thinking as a ruins seeped in the divinity of our home, staring at the immense skull, that which we all shared, scorched into Mars's rich blood red. Each of its teeth I knew was a great and steep mountain turned to a chimney above one of the many forges, and with the oppressive immensity of an intelligence which was awakening the world's engine below, with the weakness of a tiny infant, I was pulled to look upon sacred earth itself. I know my words are far away from the wars. We are away from death here, where an entire moon is turned to the Mechans, and pools of rebirth lie within its oceans. But this is my greatest victory, and the encyclopedias of supplies, weaponry loads, movement patterns of this latest conflict and the wider front melted away into mush in a long breath that was the closest to restfulness I'd known. An achievement impossible for a living blade, sharpening themselves in the moments when my circuits could cool my mind for a conditioned working of a blade, and I'd learned from my centuries toiled that there was always a chance some collapse of a broken engine, an automaton trying to free itself. Anything could happen, and alertness was foremost. My lids relaxed on the crust of that ashen ruin as I watched Mother Earth spin slowly below me. My life is execution, so that everything can be as calm and beautiful as his purity. Never had I forgotten that with the immense art in my small home at the peak of the buckling knee, and the silhouette of Mother's mesmerizing countenance scorched upon my skull, so that its silver remains would be found still glorifying her, no matter whether all else had been crushed or melted. Mars responded the same way a tornado responds to me gesturing in the air. It was a swirling immensity of blinding flame, and I was sightless, my mind peeled away to me spinning wildly, and if there are words here, then the last vestiges of my scalded soul found some target away from the furnace of magma that was the core within Mars. I was yet to feel anything but the recall of our weaponry, and the calm of coming victory across my centuries. But on the precipice to where 1,000,000,000 divine soldiers had been absorbed into living war, for the last time I felt complete. Drowning, or my tear hissing, as gladly I stepped beyond. The beacon will reside as my words, as the centre to my soul of every bone of the uncountable Imperium scatters across the apocalypse of our multitude of enemies, gathered and brought all low. Then, in the sudden dark of our crushed ancient home, I would be reborn as a mortal of weak flesh, and would rekindled voice screech with my loving bladder responding to my tensing new muscles, read from the embers residing in you, every loyal droid. The last words before Mars's blade ascended to silenced angelhood.